what is reward and punishment? Okay, so reward for good. I'm going to do this. I love a good bunny is good behavior, and punishment for bad behavior, or the perception of those two things. So the perception of good behavior and the perception of bad behavior. Now, why do I say perception? Because it's entirely that, right? Now, if you've watched any of these lives before or chatted about this stuff, I always say, right, I always do quizzes and things that Helen says, catchphrases. However, everything is on a continuum in reality, actually. So there's different choices to make, and they're on the I want to say spectrum, though it's just something like it's special. They're on the continuum. However, to label something good or bad is to label it an extreme, and therefore when it comes to reward and punishment, the words good or bad is something that I hear so often. I think probably on a daily basis, actually, which is fascinating from a human psychology point of view. So often it'll be oh, let's just use one for a Monday, always a Monday. Oh, so bad at the weekend. Oh, my food was really bad. Food was bad at the weekend. Or I've used this online before. I don't understand how I was really good with my food. I was really great at my food. I don't understand why I've not losing weight, because I've been so good. So people in their own language, and you might recognise this in your own, you might recognise that you're actually using this language yourself, right? Again, and this isn't either one of those situations. It's not a criticism, it's an observation. So one of these things we do these lives is about self-awareness. So awareness of things you're doing from a mental point of view that may be impacting how you're taking your journey at the moment through whatever that is, losing weight or becoming healthier or whatever it is. Going to extremes has an outcome. Now, one of the things that often quite entertains me, I just find it fascinating. It's one of the things I find it fascinating in human behaviour, in as much as where it comes from, right? Because it comes from somewhere. Eepa. No, it doesn't come from Leaper, sorry, she's just arrived. Who is this? How has she made this happen? Right, it doesn't come from a person. Or it might do. So when it comes to reward and punishment, often where it comes from is, I'm going to be honest, a lot of the time it comes from childhood. And if we think about, I don't know, I had this so much, to be fair, although maybe to some degree growing up. Often it's kind of see if you've ever observed or found yourself doing this with your own kids or experienced this yourself with your parents, saying that it's you've been so good, you've been a good little boy, little girl, you've been so good you can have dessert today. Or actually, you've been really bad today, as a punishment you're not going to have dessert, right? So use that as the same example. So either we reward with food, or we punish by retrieving food from or we've been in a situation where food has been taken away from. So something that's enjoyable as a treat, like you've been so good, you can have dessert. You can have whatever dessert you want as a reward for your behaviour, your good behaviour. You can have this. Guess what though? You've been bad, so I'm going to take that from you and you can't have it. Now that's, I'd love to say that's an extreme example. But I usually do go to extremes. Actually, though, we all think about it. I'm absolutely sure, to come to think of it, that I had that behaviour. I'm absolutely sure I observe it in pretty much in different varying degrees quite frequently. I'm sure we can all agree on that, actually. I don't think that's in debate. I think what is interesting though is the result of that, if you roll that forward over a period of time and into young adulthood and so forth. What you tend to see and what happens is that regardless if someone is hungry, they'll reward themselves with food in the same context. So regardless if someone, to some degree, even if they're not hungry or they've already had 2 courses, let's just say they've been 2 courses out at a dinner somewhere, they'll still use the premise of, I've been so good, so I'm still going to have dessert, regardless of whether or not I'm actually hungry because I've been good, or I've been bad, I can't have dessert, right? So what it does is it still sits in those extremes then as an adult. So you're still taking on board, I have been good, therefore I reward myself, or I have been bad, so I deprive myself until I'm good again, right? So you can see how it swings between the two quite wildly. And as I said, this is an awareness thing rather than a criticism, because it's not, there's no perfect answer to this. It is just, unfortunately, to some degree, what gets created when we're seeing or experience at a young age that reward or punishment scenario. And often the outcome of whatever that is, let's just say, I've talked about this before, it might not be like I've been good with food, etc., for the rest of the week, so a reward with dessert or something bad, right? It might be that actually it could be, we know this, like in society as such, it's like whenever something good happens, like or positive, shall we say, like I don't know, a promotion, birthday, anniversary, anything, right? It's all rewarded through food or something that we perceive to be a reward for something positive happening, and that just comes from that behavior or that reinforcement of that behavior from a young age, and also from people around us, right? I've talked about the tribe behavior. We follow tribe behavior. So if our tribe rewards in the same manner and punishes itself in the same manner, we're going to adopt that behavior and then keep doing it, right? So you know, I always talked about what, why, how. So what is it? It's a system between making us feel good for doing something and also punishing ourselves. Like, why does it happen? Because we generally have it from childhood, or we've been instilled in us that this is how we behave when it comes to food, and making ourselves feel better or feel worse by depriving ourselves. And how do you deal with it, right? So the thing is that often, and I have to say I did experience this, and it was, I'm going to say the word uncomfortable and ponder that. Why did I say uncomfortable? Why I was uncomfortable? So often, as I said, we reward through food for everything, and actually that isn't the only option. There's so many other things that you can do to celebrate a birthday or an anniversary or a promotion, or doing really well during the week at work, or remaining consistent with food choices or training or stuff. There's so many other ways to reward other than food. It's just because we are not used to doing it that we often don't seek to do those things or bring those things into that system of reward or punishment, or mainly reward. Actually, I don't want to punish anybody with stuff like that, but actually the reward element is really important, because if you would say to yourself, right, I really want, I'll tell you what I did. Really, I was admitting how much of a geek I am. So some of you will, some of you won't know that one of my passions is comics. I can't grab one, because if I go and grab it, I think the whole thing will slide behind it. I've got one over there at the minute, and for me they're a real treat, because they're not massively expensive if you go through the right place. Actually though, for me they're a luxury, because they're so expensive. Once you start no, I'm getting into geek talk. However, if you start a series, quite expensive. You can look at like 20-30 comics in one series. It's a lot of money, and so often, you know, it's just like, save the money, etc. However, I went through a period of time where, for me, a reward for doing really well in terms of my weight loss journey was to hit a benchmark and get myself one of these comics in a series. Like, again, it wasn't a ridiculous amount of money. It's still an expense, though, that I would see as luxury. Now, I could have spent that money on going out for a nice meal, like, relatively speaking. I mean, not really expensive comics. However, I could have spent that on buying myself a nice cake, or, I don't know, like I said, going out to dinner, or having, I don't know, extra starter or dessert. I started to learn that to move away from it. I had more value in that. So okay, it's what floats my boat, right? So I had more value in that moment for getting something for myself that I wouldn't normally purchase, even though it's the same price as going out to eat food, and having that than actually what I was doing before. And actually, when I'm talking to clients and talking about a reward system for how they're getting their results, etc., it's always fascinating to try and bring this stuff in, or not to try to do it, to bring it in and say, right, okay, so what is there outside of food that you reward yourself with? What is it that actually you consider to be luxury, either with time or with what makes you, and talk about happiness, what gives you a moment of happiness? What is it? What's in a situation? Is it what environment? Is it doing something like active? Is it going to visit friends and going for a walk? Is it, I don't know, spending time on your hobby like I was, or whatever it is? The thing is that as we keep going back to food as that restrict or reward system, ultimately we still kind of endorse to ourselves that we are good or bad people, or we are, oh, you want diamonds? Kate's saying she wants diamonds. Kate's saying, I'll reward myself with some diamonds. Tell you what, Kate, you tell me what weight you're going to get to. I was about to say I'll buy you a diamond. What? I will go to Argos for Elizabeth Duke and get you some cubic psycho. I'll sell some comics, Kate. It's fine. I'll sell some comics and get you something from Argos. How's that? Or any other reputable jeweller. We'll do some fascinating clowns, so I hear. Can you laugh now, Kate? Imagine if I get you a brooch. One of those clowns. So tasteful. At the end of the day, there's the restrict and reward system isn't consistent, right? We will know this if we've done this before. It isn't consistent because sometimes we just don't know I want to say the threshold. However, it is kind of threshold or the boundary between rewarding ourselves appropriately in terms of what's right for us and rewarding even when we're not hungry, for example, which I pointed out. So if we're rewarding ourselves consistently, because actually, let's look at this in a contradictory way. If I'm consistent 80% of the time, but actually I'm rewarding that so heavily for that 80% that I'm probably blowing out the water, right? From a calorie point of view, right? So this is where it gets important to understand actually what is your reward system if it is not food based, because it's always. I understand it sometimes it's a great motivator. However, to do something away from food is to reward yourself and not go into that vicious circle. So you're saying I think it's that's a good idea. I always reward myself with naughty food when I've had a dreadful shift at work. And yeah, that's the thing. It's like a reward for getting through a hard day or a hard week is like a takeaway. So that system kind of works a lot with people. So Friday night is takeaway night. Or if someone drinks, Friday night is the night they have a drink, or Saturday night, to reward themselves through getting through a hard week, and to reward themselves for hard work is to reward themselves in that way. So yeah, absolutely, it's the reward system works for a lot of things, as well as being good or bad or being resilient, right? You can reward yourself, like Link was talking about, you can reward yourself for being resilient and pushing through the day or the week. And actually say, Joe, you've done so well, you've managed that. Time to reward yourself. Now, again, the things about that one is, to some degree, we're always at work. Well, no, most of the time, right? So there's always a reason to reward ourselves for a job well done, right? Or getting through the day. And let's be honest, Nipa, your work is challenging. I'm not getting details for the maths out there. It's if you say the word shift and go dreadful, wah, you know, it's you are up against it quite frequently. And then also the reward system is going to become more frequent, because shifts are shifts, right? They are there back to back, and they are frequent. So therefore the reward system will be frequent as well. And how frequent that is will then dictate how your journey goes, or how long, etc. So understanding, just to move away from the reward system being food and or alcohol, that actually there's other ways to reward yourself, and actually just to be mindful, aware of that, right? I said this at the top, that part of these lives is actually just to understand your own behaviours, so you can find the moderation between the two. Nothing is not good or bad, or reward or punishment, even though I've used that as the topic for this live or this podcast. Actually is about the consistency and understanding how much you're rewarding and what the reward consists of. So it's an awareness piece more than anything else. So yeah, Nipa, for you, like your Kate saying diamonds, always. And Nipa, right, it's good. It's awareness thing now, right? So the thing is, now the next step is always, when you're aware of something, is decide, right, okay, does this have more value for me? Is this reward have more value for me? Or could I find something more valuable that I found more joy in than in that moment of overindulging or rewarding myself, if actually I'm not rewarding myself long term? But that's an individual decision, right? Any individual can decide that one. Right. Recappage. So I said it was reward. So reward is for good behaviour. The perception, right? I'll repeat that again. important terminology, the perception of good behaviour, i.e. gone through a hard shift, i.e. I've been really good with food, and or bad behaviour. So I'll punish myself and restrict myself from food, or swing between the two, so it's extremes, right? So I mainly focused on reward, and I said, okay, well, where does the reward and punishment come from? Very often it's young age. Like, I use the dessert situation because I've heard it so many times when I've been out and about and experienced it myself as well. You've been so good, you've been well behaved, Helen, have dessert, have whatever dessert you want. Helen, you've been a bad girl, no dessert for you, go straight to bed. That also happened quite a lot. However, then I perceived that good behaviour meant reward with the things I wanted and really enjoyed and loved when it came to food, and actually bad behaviour meant I didn't get to have it. So it was in my own interest to be good all the time. And then as you grow up, as we do as people, we take the same beliefs and think, well, I've been good today, so therefore I'm going to reward myself in the same way. It's just the size of that reward and how often and how frequent changes a lot from a child to an adult, because as an adult, free control, right? As a child, you didn't get to control that. As an adult, you can control exactly how many times you reward yourself and how often and for what. Again, on a perception, right? So again, the outcome is good behaviour. I've trained 4 times a week, or I've been really good with my food, good, again, means I can reward myself with whatever I want to. And again, the challenge is like how often and how frequently and how much you reward yourself by, based on how you perceive how good or how bad you've been. Boom. Okay, so my thing said for solution-based is, you know, for some of you watching, you'll know, just in case everybody who's listening, watching doesn't understand. So for me, I was quite overweight. So it's like nearing up on 90 kilos. So for me, I had to move away from the reward system with food because it was so instilled in me. And then obviously I had quite good or bad behaviour growing up. So it's, so for me, and when I work with a lot of clients as well, it's finding a solution that's reward based that isn't about food, even that is such our natural go-to. Reward ourselves when our parents can't. Like I said just a moment ago, we can control that now. And actually it's moving away and looking at the things that we reward ourselves with that has just as much enjoyment, or that factor, that the food does. And sometimes that can be a little bit more challenging. However, it can help us if we're trying to move away from certain behaviours and mindsets. And always be consistent and thinking of the focus of the reward rather than the behaviour, right? So focus on the reward and not the behaviour, whether it was one or the other, and that will help you be more consistent. And again, just to reiterate, it is about awareness. All right, so once you're aware, then you make a decision and then see where it leads. So that one's done. Ooh, Taurus, shame and weight loss. Dun dun dun. Ba, ba, ba. Big word, shame. Get into that one. In the meantime, enjoy that. What is scorcher out there? Enjoy that one. Barbecue sensibly. Okay, I'll get onto that diamond for you, and I will catch you all tomorrow.